Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Adharma Abhibhavat Krishna Pradushyanti Kula Striyaha Strishu Dushtasu Varshneya Jayate Varna Sankaraha. I'll read the translation and purport in English, as there's quite a few people here who don't understand Tamil. Can you follow the Tamil in the purport? Somewhat. It's difficult Tamil. Translation. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become polluted, and from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. Purport. Good population in human society is the basic principle for peace, prosperity, and spiritual progress in life. The Varnashram religion's principles were so designed that the good population would prevail in society for the general spiritual progress of state and community. Such population depends on the chastity and faithfulness of its womanhood. As children are very prone to be misled, women are similarly very prone to degradation. Therefore, both children and women require protection by the elder members of the family. By being engaged in various religious practices, women will not become misled into adultery. According to Chanakya Pandit, women are generally not very intelligent and therefore not trustworthy. So the different family traditions of religious activity should always engage them, and thus their chastity and devotion will give birth to a good population eligible for participating in the Varnashram system. On the failure of such Varnashram dharma, naturally the women become free to act and mix with men, and thus adultery is indulged in at the risk of unwanted population. Irresponsible men also provoke adultery in society, and thus unwanted children flood the human race at the risk of war and pestilence. Herein is expressed a worldview very different to that which prevails in and shapes modern society. Arjuna was very afraid of Adharma. Arjuna was afraid that fighting in such a circumstance would be in itself an act of Adharma, and that it would result in a significant increase in the Adharma in human society. We live in an age of Adharma, and therefore the concepts which are being discussed here and in the verse and in the purport are foreign to people in the modern age. We live in an age where divorce, adultery, gay rights and other such adharmic acts or principles are part of modern life. A basic principle of dharma. Here we go. They won't turn off their cell phone. You tell them 10 times, they won't turn it off. Please don't turn off your cell phone. Maybe they'll turn it off if you ask them not to. It's our general experience that no one ever, however many times you ask, they won't turn off their cell phone. It's just some kind of selfishness. So, Adharma, a basic, or rather let's put it the positive way, in a dharmic society, a basic principle is restricting the mixing of men and women. In the modern age, this is considered old-fashioned and very wrong. Even one generation ago, men and women didn't mix up. The older people will remember how the young girls were escorted to and from school, and there was no question of them mixing up with or talking with the young boys at school. And going back even further, they wouldn't be going to school at all. But nowadays, it's young people have no idea of that, as the young boys and girls mix freely and joke, and boyfriends and girlfriends, and all these things are going on. The result of this free mixing, Arjuna is saying here, will be that there will be a bad population produced. Children born out of lust will be lusty. And where there's Kam, there is also Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. And persons who are filled with these qualities, they're not really human beings, they're uncivilized. And such persons are unfit to engage in the varnashram system. And that means it's completely uncivilized and there's no hope for their elevation. So this is the situation in the modern age, a royal addition of the animals. Srila Prabhupada describes modern humankind. They say the lion is the king of the animals. Is that said in Tamil also? They say that because they consider the human not an animal, but actually the human is he's also an animal. In the modern age, people have become like animals. So we may say, well, why are we discussing this? We should be discussing about very high spiritual topics. But there's no question of understanding spiritual topics if we're overcome by Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada and Matsarya. So in human society all over the world, until recently, not only in India, there was restriction on mixing between men and women, because that increases lust. The example is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam of butter and fire. If butter is put close to fire, it will melt. That is natural. It's a natural law. So similarly, when men and women come in contact, there is attraction. It is a natural law. Now, the modern way of thinking is that it's natural, so why not indulge it? But the civilized way of understanding is that unrestricted mixing, it gives rise to a feeling which may be natural, but it's not good. Just because something's natural doesn't mean that it's good or that we should indulge it or encourage it. Disease is also natural, we can say. So if someone's sick with viral fever, and someone may say, well, keep the children away from him. Why? If they go close to him, they'll also get viral fever. It's natural. What's wrong with that? Well, it's wrong. Something wrong with it. So in Bhagavatam, this attraction between male and female, that is called kamam, hrit kama rogam. It means the heart disease, or disease in the heart of lusty desire. So that is a problem for everyone in this material world. Now, of course, by chanting Hare Krishna, that's on a fully spiritual level, and that takes us beyond all the lower levels of dharma. But practically speaking, we see that although it shouldn't happen, but it does, that devotees who are chanting Hare Krishna, they also become influenced by the lower modes of nature. So theoretically, devotees, men, women, they should be able to mix up with the understanding that we're all spiritual, we're all spirit souls, so they should be able to mix. But practically speaking, we see that even though they're chanting Hare Krishna, devotees, they also become victimized they can become victimized by lower desires. So devotees need to understand the basic principles of Dharma, otherwise it'll be very difficult to practice the Param Dharma of Krishna consciousness. It's very it would seem almost impossible to practice Dharma at any level in the modern age. What to speak of practicing the highest Dharma. Here in this temple there are brahmacharis and one sannyasi and grihastha devotees also. Grihasthas are also supposed to be self-controlled in family life. But the whole modern culture works opposite to self-control or brahmachari life. It's considered normal for women to walk up to men even if they don't know them and just talk to them, and men to walk up to women, they don't know them and they just talk to them. That's modern life. Even if there's no gross sexual overtures, but people may think, well, we're just like brothers and sisters, but Maya doesn't think like that. She has her own way of working. Less than a century ago in India, at any public meeting like this, the men and women would be separated by a bamboo screen. That was called chik in Bengali or Hindi. I don't know what it's called in Tamil. You know that? The man and the woman, they wouldn't see each other. Even our Param Guru Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he used to give Diksha mantras to his women disciples from behind a screen. They wouldn't come close to him. And there were no women doctors, there were only men doctors. So how did the women get treated? The Ayurvedic doctors would see the women patient from behind the screen, and they would take their pulse with the thread, by a thread, thread would be attached to their arm, and they would feel like that. They were so strict. Even Srila Prabhupada was so strict, he wouldn't sit in a room alone with his sister when they were both over 70 years old. We may say, well, that's too strict, because Prabhupada's, they're both very old and they're both pure devotees, and what's the need to be so strict? Obviously, Srila Prabhupada was doing this to show the example for us, that we shouldn't think that we can be very loose and free in our behavior. On the one hand, we can't go back. It's not realistic to go back to, immediately at least, to the strictness that was there previously in human society. On the other hand, if there's actually a spiritual society, there has to be decorum in relationships between the sexes, between the genders. Decorum, do you know what that means? It means like maryada. Of course, some so-called spiritual societies, the men and women all dance together with each other. It's even recommended in this something. But that is clearly adharma. So, we should be aware that adharma will spoil everything. Everything that we're trying to achieve will be spoiled by adharma. Our own spiritual advancement will be spoiled if we become again attracted to the opposite sex. And the principles that we're trying to establish in human society, we can't do so unless we follow them ourselves. And therefore we have to be very cautious in how the sexes mix with each other. This is not only for brahmacharis, this is for grihasthas also. Sometimes grihasthas think that, well, I'm married, so it's a license for me to I can mix up with everyone else's wife also, and laugh and joke with them, but this is not proper. Even in the name, even the intention may be to serve Krishna, but Maya is very tricky. It may be that, for instance, cooking, a man is there and a woman are there and they're both thinking how to cook for Krishna very nicely, but because, say that much. But the nature of Maya is that when a man and a woman are together, they become attracted. Matra svasra duhitra va naviviktasano bhavet. Balavan indriya gramo vidvansam afikarshati. Bhagavatam states that one should not remain close or sit close to one's own mother, sister or daughter. What to speak of others? Because the senses are so strong that even a learned person can become disturbed in such a circumstance. So we may think, well, that's too much. How could you become attracted to your mother? But the Bhagavatam warns. So we should take it as a fact. We want to come to the highest level of consciousness, but Maya has her tricks to drag us down to the lowest level of consciousness. Maya means the illusory energy, and everyone is covered. Yaya samohito jiva, she is the one who, the energy that bewilders everyone. She bewilders everyone by her avaranatmika vritti. She covers everyone. Everyone is covered by this Maya, by which they forget that they're servants of Krishna. But if someone tries to come out of that covering, Maya doesn't let them go very easily. Then she brings her prakshepatmika vritti, her throwing potency, to throw us back into the illusion of identifying with the body. Prakshepatmika. Prakshepa means to throw. So she has her various tricks by which the jiva, even if he's trying to serve Krishna, becomes bewildered. So how to practice Krishna consciousness in an age which is, or how to practice spiritual life in an age which is, the whole atmosphere is completely opposite to that. We have to adopt a different way of thinking and acting to that of what is considered normal in human society. In normal human society, the normal means everyone's going to hell. Yeah. Normal human society means everyone's going to hell. People think eating meat is normal, telling lies is normal, taking intoxication is normal, and mixing of men and women is normal. But all these activities, they simply lead to hell. So devotees, they have to adopt a different way of thinking and acting. We should not underestimate Maya or overestimate our extent of freedom from Maya. That's almost everyone on the spiritual path makes this mistake. They think that, well, Maya's not so bad and I'm doing pretty good, so no need to worry too much. But with this attitude, we can't get. By having such an attitude, we're already in Maya, and there's no question of being captured by Maya. If we think like that, that's just in itself the evidence that we are captured by Maya. So, interaction between the sexes should be cautious, very minimized and cautious. Doesn't mean that men and women should hate each other, but they should realize that Maya never sleeps, and that we are very weak before Maya. Great devotees like Narad Muni, they can do anything and not be victimized by Maya. But we should not think that we are on that level. Or even if we happen to be, then we should set an example for others of caution. Caution. Just like I was giving the example of Srila Prabhupada, he's very clearly a great pure devotee of Krishna, but just to teach us how to be cautious, he didn't want to stay in a room alone with his sister when they're both over 70 years old. Krishna is the only enjoyer. in this material world, our consciousness is to imitate Krishna. So our tendency is, instead of seeing everything in the world as paraphernalia to be engaged in the service of Krishna, we see everything as paraphernalia to be utilized for our own enjoyment. When a materialistic person sees anything, they think, oh, can I use that for my enjoyment? Or if it's something they don't like, they think, oh, I don't like that. There's a mosquito, I don't like it. They see everything in terms of their own sensual enjoyment and attraction and repulsion. But a devotee cultivates the consciousness of seeing everything in relationship to Krishna. He sees himself as a servant of Krishna, and everything in the world is paraphernalia to be used for the service of Krishna. Until one is fully perfect in that consciousness, fully fixed in that consciousness, there's always the possibility of slipping back to the lower consciousness. And especially the sexual attraction it's the very strongest binding force of Maya. So, yeah, Balavan. Now here's that word, Balavan. That comes in Tamil also? Balavan Indriya Gramo. That I just quoted. The senses are very strong. So it is not wise to overestimate our ability to overcome the attraction of Maya, nor is it wise to underestimate the ability of Maya to bewilder us. And practically, unless this binding force in the material world, which is sexual attraction, unless that's controlled within Vaishnava society, then there is no Vaishnava society. Then everything becomes degraded. There's no question of dharma, as Arjuna indicates here, if everyone's living a degraded way of life. So this point should be understood very clearly. Krishna is the only enjoyer. Everything is meant for the enjoyment of Krishna. We are meant for the enjoyment of Krishna. All our endeavors are meant for the pleasure of Krishna. Now, that doesn't mean that we should be miserable, but actually we can only be happy if we are engaged fully in the service of Krishna. But the perverted tendency of the conditioned soul is to desire to enjoy separately from Krishna, or to falsely consider, or to consider oneself to be a separate enjoyer from Krishna. And this sense of enjoyment from Krishna is particularly strong in the sexual attraction. So we have to be very cautious not to indulge that. Because the tendency is, just like ghee, if it's in the winter you see ghee is solid, but then if you put it in the ghee in the pot close to the fire, then it melts. It's a natural occurrence. So similarly, the solid determination to serve Krishna, that tends to melt when male and female come in proximity. Actually, our heart should melt in love of Krishna. But if it melts out of sexual attraction, then our spiritual life is completely spoiled. Arjuna understood this principle, and the point that he's making to Krishna is certainly relevant. Although Lord Krishna, he overrode Arjuna's objections to fight. There were other principles which had to be considered also. Yeah. But the point that Arjuna is making here is not irrelevant, it is most relevant. And it's certainly relevant in the modern age also. It's unfortunately, even within Vaishnava society, we see people who have come to practice Krishna consciousness, but whose practice is spoiled by their illicit sexual attraction. This is unfortunately quite common in the Western world, and not unknown in India also. the original spiritual culture of India protected both men and women from fall down. There was a system which is still followed by a few people in North India, of that women, they're not seen by others. They don't come out of the house, or they may go in groups to a temple, that's all. On a family occasion, they may go to some function. But free mixing is not allowed. Nowadays, they want to send the women into space, and women in the army, that's there, and not in the American army. They have that, men and women mixing up in the army. So the whole principle on which human civilization is based is that men and women should be separated for their own mutual good, because free mixing of the sexes simply leads to degradation. But in the modern age, even in India, we see women are married and they don't think twice about walking up to some man that they don't even know and just talking with him and then joking and laughing. In other words, the whole culture is spoiled. And people, in their foolishness, they think this is modern and advanced. Well, it's modern, but it's only advanced in degradation. This is not proper human society. This is like animal society, or maybe lower than the animal. Because in the animal kingdom, the mate, the male and the female, they stay together throughout life. They don't mix up and have parties, as in modern degraded human society. So you may think, well, we came here to hear something spiritual. Well, there's no question of spiritual unless we can rise above the material. And the sexual attraction is the binding force in material life. Therefore, there are certain rules and there are certain rules for restricting the mixing of the sexes in actually civilized human society. And maybe one generation ago, it wasn't very much necessary to speak so much about these things in India, because these principles were part of life as they had been for thousands of years. But modern India is different. It's progressive and advanced, so they say. And not only young boys and girls, but even married people, they think nothing of joking and laughing with other people's wives, like this. And even after taking to Krishna consciousness, people's habits, they don't change very quickly. And so among devotees, they may be also very loose in their behavior. But loose behavior between the sexes means there's going to be trouble. No doubt about it. Maya is very tricky. Even if for the sake of service to Krishna, we mix up the sexes, still Maya will work. She won't say, oh, very good, you're serving Krishna, okay, I'll go away. She doesn't say that. Maya never takes a holiday. She never even takes a brief snooze like most people do during class. Maya works very powerfully 24 hours a day on everyone. And as I was just saying, the avaranatmika vritti and the prakshepatmika vritti. When she sees someone is trying to come out of her clutches, then she goes into overdrive, or she gets into top gear. She gets into a special mode to throw people back. So even if we take to the service of Krishna, Maya, she doesn't just say, okay, I'll leave you alone, but rather she tests us more to see if we really want to serve Krishna. Sometimes, you see, men like to impress women and women like to attract men. So sometimes it may happen that even one is being a devotee, he may be very devoted or show to be a very great devotee of Krishna, but actually he's subtly thinking how by doing so they can impress the opposite sex. How to get out of this syndrome. Tivrena bhakti yogena. Only by practicing Krishna consciousness very intensely can we attract the mercy of Krishna, by which we can become free totally from Maya. A half-hearted approach will not help us very much. Devotees have to be very determined to come out of Maya. So again, that doesn't mean that men hate women or women hate men, but they should be cautious in their dealings. Bhagavatam states that we should never trust our own mind. We should always be aware that Maya never sleeps. And we can pray to Haridas Thakur, the great devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who practically overcame sexual attraction by his attraction to chanting the holy names of Krishna. So we live in... Arjuna was afraid, Adharma bibhavat Krishna, that Adharma will become prominent. So Arjuna was afraid of that, but practically in the modern age, there's no question of Adharma becoming prominent. It is totally prominent. And not only is Arjuna was afraid that the Kula Striya, the respectable woman, would become polluted, but the whole society is polluted in the modern age, men and women. So, what to do? It's a very bad age. Kale dosha nidhe rajan astihi eko mahan guna kirtana deva krishnasya mukta sangha parang rajet. Everything in Kali Yuga is very bad. Especially where this free mixing of men and women is there, then that means there's no actual human society. It's just dog and cat society. But there is one great quality of Kali Yuga. By chanting the name of Krishna, one can be free from all the faults of Kali Yuga and go to Krishna. But that at the same time we require to understand what is the nature of Maya and not act in such a way that we will be victimized by Maya. Is there any question about this? Give him the mic.
In ISKCON, we give practice to the men to be away from women by brahmacharya practice. And similarly, is there any training for the woman?
Well, traditionally, women were trained in the home. Their role is as daughters, wives, and mothers. Traditionally, the training was within the home. Modern education has spoiled this. This idea that young girls should go out and study and have a career, it's actually a disaster for family life. The girls don't get married until they're almost 30 years old. But the sexual attraction begins long before that. And as the whole society it's consumer society based on enjoying the advertisements, enjoy the senses more and more. So how can young boys and girls who are mixed up in the schools and colleges refrain from enjoying with each other? So it's become a normal thing that girls are already used before marriage. Then there's no. Then marriage loses its meaning, and then the children are not looked after. And with each generation, the children become. Each generation becomes more and more adharmic and animal-like. The whole family structure breaks down. Modern society is a total disaster. And Indian people are so stupid that they actually have such a great culture, but they want to throw it all away and become degraded like the animal-like people of the Western consumer society. I think you should have a big sign outside saying, please turn your phones off, and a fine will be taken of it. It's really very inconsiderate that people's phones keep on going off in the middle. You should have a sign outside, and then we'll take a fine for the... Yeah, so...
In the neophyte stage of Bhakti, when we are working outside and going and studying, something like that, so we are put in a circumstances where we have to hear and we have to see all these things. So how can we go with our bhakti in such a circumstances?
Yeah, better come and join the brahmacharya ashram. You have a better chance. Otherwise, there's no doubt it's very difficult. The whole society is set up for everyone to go to hell. I guess the only thing you can do is to become what they would call antisocial. They think it normal for young boys and girls to mix up. It's nice to be friendly, they think. But don't be friendly. A man has no business being friendly with anyone except his wife, mother, or daughter. And even that is restricted. One devotee was telling me, you can see that description in the book, The Glimpses of Traditional Indian Life, that his sister used to bring every afternoon used to bring to his grandfather a cup of coffee. Of course, coffee is not the greatest thing in the world, but it's an instructive anecdote which I'm about to tell you. So his granddaughter was bringing a cup of coffee, and one day he asked her, "How old are you now?" And she told him 13. He said, "You don't bring the coffee anymore. You arrange for someone else." So that was the principle, very strict. If there's no strictness, then there must be fall down. And actually in Indian society, there are all kinds of horrible things going on which people don't talk about or they don't report, but there are many, many horrible things going on, even within the families, because people don't follow these principles. We should not underestimate the power of Maya. So even we may think that, well, among devotees it's nice, we're all devotees, the men and women can laugh and joke and be friendly, but it's better to be cautious. We respect all women except our wife as being a mother. We treat them respectfully and we deal with them minimally. This is the dharmic path or the safe path. Otherwise there's chaos caused in Vaishnava society. Sad to say, even within our ISKCON, sannyasis, not just one or two, they've fallen down due to inattention to these principles. In the Western world, it's considered normal that people marry, they get divorced, they marry again, and women have 2 children by one husband, and then 3 children by another husband, and 1 child by another husband. It's considered normal. Or the women are not married at all, and they have 3 children, and by all 3 different men, and they're not even sure who the 3 men are. It's a horrible situation. So there's no question of developing a Vaishnava society unless we first come to at least the human civilized platform. And this free mixing of the sexes will spoil everything. It's better to err on the side of caution. That means to be more cautious, or to be very cautious than to be very loose, because it's very easy to fall into illicit sex and then spiritual life is spoiled. And we shouldn't think that because we put tilak on and we're chanting Hare Krishna that we're free from the attraction of Maya. That is a very great mistake.